Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Camperman, and I'm the Outreach Program Manager of the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance. I'll be talking to you today about managing a successful food scrap diversion program at apartment complexes with tenants while adhering to the guidelines of Vermont state laws. If you have a question, feel free to click on the Q&A or chat button at the bottom of your screen. All of the materials and websites that I mentioned today will be included along with the recording of this webinar in a follow-up email you'll receive tomorrow as a registrant. It'll also be posted on our YouTube page along with the associated links. So let's get started. Many of you might be hearing about the Alliance for the first time today, so I'll give you a little bit of background. The Alliance was formed in 2015 to assist participating towns in reducing solid waste disposed in landfills by reducing the amount of waste generated, conserve resources, and promote recycling and reuse. The Alliance provides education and outreach to businesses, schools, and residents. Help achieve the Alliance's goal to reduce the amount of materials people put in our service area into landfills and increase the amount of material diverted from landfills for recycling and reuse. The Alliance is made up of 13 towns: Arlington, Bennington, Dorset, Glastonbury, Manchester, Pownell, Rupert, Sandgate, Searsburg, Shaftesbury, Stamford, Sunderland, and Woodford. The towns of Peru, Reedsboro, Londonderry, Landgrove, and Winhall, while in Bennington County, are not members of the Alliance. All of the businesses, residences, schools, and organizations located within the Alliance can take advantage of our services. Services the Alliance provides include solid waste audits, where we visit your business and review your waste management practices and offer technical assistance in managing your solid waste. This could include a review of your current recycling, understanding recycling laws, provide sources to recycling items banned from the landfill, provide you communication pieces and signing for your staff about recycling, and suggest ways to possibly lower your solid waste hauling costs. We host household hazardous waste collection events during warmer months of the year. The service is also available to small businesses if you pre-register with us, which can cost less than having a dedicated pickup by a household hazardous waste collection company coming to your location. We provide source information for the disposal of banned items such as computers and electronics, fluorescent bulbs, and paint through special recycling. Most of this information is available on our website. We also provide community outreach through presentations to groups and the public about recycling, composting, and waste reduction. A good example of this is making a presentation to residents of an apartment or condominium complex about food scrap diversion and proper recycling. Nearly half of all the waste produced globally is either organic or biodegradable. When sent to a landfill and allowed to degrade anaerobically, that's without the presence of oxygen, methane is produced, which is 30 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at trapping heat. The increases in greenhouse gas emissions is responsible for our climate change. So when we reduce the amount of waste we generate, we reduce our need for additional landfill space while reducing our carbon footprint. Vermont's Universal Recycling Law adopted a food recovery hierarchy into law in 2012 to draw attention to our use of uneaten food and help guide consumers into making the highest and best use of their food. As you can look at this diagram, the most preferred method being source reduction, followed by food for people, then animals, then composting. When we reduce our consumption of food, and thereby reducing the amount of food scraps generated in the first place, when we shop smarter, strategically plan meals with the foods we have on hand, less of our food goes to waste. When we do have leftover food, our first priority is to give it to people first through food pantries and other organizations. When we have lower quality food waste, we share that with animals and other agricultural uses. Any leftover food at this point should be composted or used in anaerobic digestion. In 2014, Vermont began requiring large food scrap generators, like grocery stores, universities, and large hospitals, to divert their food scraps from landfills to certified facilities. As of July 1st, 2020, Smaller generators, including all residents in Vermont, are now required to divert their food scraps. This requires all residents to adjust the way in which food is disposed of, and as landlords, implement a program for food scrap diversion. At the same time, it also must comply with Vermont's Rental Housing Health Code. I'll spend the next few minutes outlining the details of those requirements. The first step is to assure that arrangements have been made for the removal of food scraps from all rentals, which can be done in a variety of ways. As you decide on which method of collection and disposal to use, consider that some tenants don't drive, or there may be insufficient space to manage scraps on site. A landlord has several options. Landlord can subscribe to a food scrap pickup service for tenants. If the landlord is already providing trash and single stream recycling on site to tenants through a commercial hauler, the hauler may also provide food scrap collection. The law gets a little murky here, as haulers are only required to offer pickup of food scraps from commercial accounts and residential addresses with 4 or more units. If, however, the landlord of fewer than 4 units might already be receiving trash pickup from a hauler, that hauler may be willing to offer food scrap collection service. Many of the larger haulers are expanding their service, and newer companies are coming onto the market throughout Vermont to meet the increased demand for this service. If you as a landlord don't have a hauler or work with a hauler that doesn't yet provide the service, you can look up food scrap haulers at the state's website, vtrecycles.com. Another option is to ensure tenants bring food scraps to a drop-off location, such as a transfer station, farm, or community composting facility. Yet another option is to set up a backyard composting system or solar digester for tenants. And finally, landlords can require tenants to make an independent plan to manage their food scraps separate of their trash and recycling, so long as the landlord can confirm that this is happening. Regardless of which of the options I just mentioned is chosen, in addition to trash and recycling bins, a landlord must provide durable and watertight receptacles for food scraps that are stored outside until they either hauled away, brought to a drop-off, or composted. A properly managed compost bin or solar digester fulfills this requirement as well. Tenants may also take their scraps directly to their receptacles instead of placing them in another collection bin, as is typically done when food scraps are picked up by a hauler. Nor is an outside container required if tenants are taking scraps themselves directly from the kitchen to a drop-off facility, such as a farm, community composting facility, or transfer station. Landlords are not required to provide kitchen containers, but many do to provide these as a way to encourage good food scrap management habits. When commercial haulers provide food scrap collection, they typically provide containers such as rolling carts similar to trash and recycling carts to store outside or within a shed or garage, or they may provide a bucket for each unit or two. If the hauler does not provide a container while the scraps are being stored outside, the landlord must provide that receptacle. When a landlord is coordinating drop-offs, say to a transfer station, 2 to 5 gallon buckets with lids work well for each unit's food scraps. For backyard composting, if someone is willing to actively manage the bins or piles, landlords can install backyard compost bins or install solar digesters. The latter do not require much maintenance when set up properly and may only need to be emptied every few years. Furthermore, the code requires landlords to keep common areas and other parts of the premises not used as a dwelling space in a clean and sanitary condition, free of trash, recyclables, and food scraps. They also must ensure that the trash, recycling, and food scrap containers and systems do not attract pests or create a public health hazard. Now that I've explained the various options there are to food scrap diversion and how they are governed by the Housing Health Code, I'm going to describe the ways to get your chosen food scrap collection system started. If you are already using a hauler to pick up your trash and recycling, check to see if they offer food scrap collection. If your decision to use this method is financially motivated, check to see if your costs will be higher with the added service. If you run a larger property with multiple units or generate a high volume of food scraps, you may be able to negotiate a more favorable fee structure with your hauler by adjusting the size of your trash collection containers or pickup schedule. It may also be worth conducting a cost comparison among different haulers. You may find expanding your current collection with your hauler to include food scraps is the easiest to implement for tenants when the convenience outweighing any increase in the hauling costs. When using a hauler, keep in mind, managing odors and pests around food scraps prior to pickup require adding carbons, or browns as they're called, such as sawdust, mulch, wood shavings, leaves, shredded newspaper, and other organic material on top of the food scraps, stored in a tote or a bin. Commercial haulers may provide an additional tote containing wood pulp or sawdust, which landlords and tenants use to apply on top of food scraps. So you'll need to make sure that your collection location has enough space for the additional bins. The amount of sawdust or other browns added on top of the food scraps will vary with the temperature outside and how full your bin is. For example, in summer months, you may need to add 2 to 6 inches of browns material, particularly to full bins, to keep maggots and flies at bay, and then much less during winter months when there are fewer pests and the temperatures are lower. Packing sawdust down with a handheld garden tool will help control the pests and maximize your bin space between pickups. If you're dropping off food scraps at a transfer station, make sure you're aware of the hours and fees charged, and keep in mind the health code requires that trash, recyclables, and food scraps must be removed from dwellings not less than once a week. Most haulers and drop-off locations accept all food scraps, including meat and bones, fats, coffee grounds, and filters, as well as spoiled food. It is important to have tenants understand what goes into bins or collection buckets is just organic matter. No produce sticky labels, wrappings, plastic bags, or other compostable or disposable serveware. And it's good to use a paper bag, perhaps, to line a kitchen collection bin. Plastic bags do not belong in composting bins because they do not break down during the composting process and must be sorted out mechanically. Most haulers and drop-off locations accept all food scraps. But haulers only accept bags that are labeled BPI certified and compostable. Check with the hauler before implementing them in your program. A side note, compostable bags should be used as a bucket liner only and can be very expensive, particularly over a long period of time, and their quality from company to company can vary widely. A less expensive method may be to line a small bucket with newspaper and wash out the bucket once emptied into a larger collection tote. Area hardware stores and online bulk wholesalers sell buckets with lids. Some restaurants, bakeries, grocery stores, and food manufacturers end up with extra buckets that you can use free of charge. If you maintain just a few residential units, composting food scraps in the backyard can be an easy solution if you or your tenants are willing to actively manage the piles throughout the year. Compost bins can be made of a variety of materials, but plastic compost bins purchased at a hardware store or through our alliance during warmer weather months at scheduled sales can be an economical and easy way to get started. Tenants composting in the backyard should be reminded that leftover meat and bones should be placed in the trash rather than composting bins, as the composting system in the backyard won't reach a temperature high enough to properly break down the animal material and instead can attract unwanted animals. The key to managing a successful composting system is understanding the technique for proper breakdown, to keep animals away, and to maintain healthy sanitary conditions on your property. University of Vermont's Extension has a master composting course online, and the state of Vermont has resources as well for successful composting. I'll include links to these in the follow-up email. and the YouTube video. Solar digesters are also a good solution if you don't have a use for the finished compost and just want to break down the food scraps. A solar digester will break down all food scraps, including meat, bones, and animal waste. While a lot more expensive up front, the digesters require less looking after once the composting system is set up, or once it's set up, more so than a composting system. In either case, it's important that you understand that you need to size your system to be sufficient to serve the number of units you have and size of families. Vermont has seen an increase in human-bear interactions, so it's important to take a few steps to discourage bears and to manage your compost so it doesn't attract animals. Take down bird feeders during non-winter months. Use 3 times as many browns as greens, those are your food scraps, to minimize smell and to speed up the composting process, and regularly turn your compost pile so the materials break down more quickly. If bear activity persists, check with your neighbors to see if they have bird feeders or other food sources that are attracting the animals. More information about composting and resources to address animal issues can be found in a booklet entitled "The Dirt on Compost," distributed by the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. For any food scrap diversion program to be successful, communication and understanding of the process is key. It is important to help tenants understand what food scraps are and how you want them to be collected in their dwelling and brought to the central collection area or backyard systems. Will you provide them a receptacle, such as the bucket with a lid, to collect the food scraps in their kitchen to later take to the collection bin outside? Explain to them the collection schedule if they are at all involved in taking collection bins or buckets to curbside or central locations to be picked up by a hauler. They need to know what is and is not allowed in the collection tote or compost bin or solar digester. The state of Vermont has downloadable bin signs you can laminate and post above collection bins, identifying proper sorting of food scraps, recycling, and trash, as well as instructions for setting up a composting system. I will include the link in a follow-up email along with the rental housing health code. Your hauler may also provide you signs for easy sorting of items. Landlords of larger facilities have noted good success when using a tenant within the complex to act as sort of a guide and influencer with the rest of the tenants to instruct them on proper sorting and upkeep of the waste sorting area. If tenants are contaminating the bins by putting items in the wrong place, you can send them reminders about proper sorting within the system. It's important to put this whole process into perspective. When tenants understand that most of what they are, quote, throwing away really isn't trash, but a marketable commodity with a monetary value on items such as paper, aluminum, cardboard, glass, tin, plastic, and now food scraps, their behavior about sorting items and making sure items are clean and dry and uncontaminated may change. And you'll know that your efforts of educating them are paying off when the bins are looking cleaner, smell less, and they've done their part to reduce their carbon footprint. Now, if they aren't really thinking about that, then they're at least likely to notice that it doesn't smell as much. So to recap, Landlord has a variety of options to arrange for the removal of food scraps from rentals. Landlord can subscribe to a pickup service where available for tenants such as a hauler, or ensure tenants bring food scraps to a drop-off, farm, or transfer station. They can set up a backyard compost system or solar digester, or require tenants to make an independent plan to manage food scraps separate from their trash and confirm that this happens. Vermont law requires haulers to collect food scraps from commercial accounts and residential addresses of 4 or more units, but haulers may offer the service to addresses with fewer than 4 units. A landlord must provide durable and watertight receptacles for food scraps that are stored outside until they are hauled away, brought to a drop-off, or composted. The exception is when food scraps are brought directly to a backyard compost system or solar digester. A hauler may provide the receptacle, such as a bin or a tote, in the common area for collection of everyone's food scraps. If none is provided, the landlord must provide the receptacle. A landlord must keep common areas and other parts of the premises not used for dwelling space clean and in sanitary condition, free from trash, recyclables, and food scraps. They are to ensure that the containers and systems do not attract pests or create a public health hazard. Most food haulers accept food scraps, including meat, bones, fats, oils, coffee grounds, and filters and spoiled food. All food scraps picked up by haulers or composted on site must be free of labels and bags. The exception is if a hauler permits bags that are BPI certified compostable bags. Landlords need to allow enough space for additional bins required to collect food scraps and store sawdust browns to put on top of the food scraps, as well as supply adequate signing and information about the waste management program put in place. Tenants composting on site may discard their meat and bones in the trash, since composting bins do not reach temperatures high enough to ensure proper breakdown, and also to avoid attracting animals and pests. Tenants using solar digesters may add meat, bones, and animal waste to their systems. Proper education to tenants and signing will go a long way to a successful waste management system. Landlords should partner with the tenant to help educate and communicate to tenants about correct sorting when there is contamination to ensure highest and best use of recycled materials. As an added point not previously mentioned, I'd like to encourage larger properties especially to consider offering the separating of banned items from the trash, such as electronics or e-waste, be held separately and brought to transfer stations. It doesn't take a lot of time or space, but spares precious elements that can be recycled and potentially combustible components, such as lithium batteries, from being landfilled and also known to start fires. These items can be taken to the transfer station where they can be recycled in a safe manner. In addition, architectural paint, still in liquid form that may be collecting on site, can be dropped off for the recycling at several area retailers in quantities up to 5 gallons a day in their original container. Any paint that is hardened should be disposed of in the trash. And finally, we'd like to remind folks that household hazardous waste, that includes things like chemicals, pesticides, paints, and mercury-containing items such as fluorescent bulbs, thermostats, thermometers, and alkaline and rechargeable batteries, can be dropped off during our household hazardous waste collection events held during warmer months of the year. Follow us on Facebook or see our ads in the Vermont News Guide for scheduled dates and locations. Thank you for taking time to view this presentation. I will now answer any questions you may have. Okay, I think we're finished. There are no questions. Feel free to reach out to these numbers to either myself as Outreach Program Manager or Michael Batcher, the Program Manager of the Bennington County Regional Commission. Either one of us are able to answer any of your questions regarding recycling, provide technical assistance on site or over the phone, via email, whichever is easiest for you. And we're here to help. Again, thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. Enjoy your day.